All right. Thank you for still being with us. And this is the last part of this course on the application of the anaerobic speed reserve to team sport. And now we're diving into even further the details and even the more micro adjustments when we use the profile. So once we've now chosen whether we're going to be choosing more repeated sprint, rather long intervals, rather short intervals based on those athlete profile, how do we put that into practice? So we're really into the prescription and at the end of the spectrum. And I'm sure with this, there's stuff that you've seen already, especially talking about the need to individualize the intensity, the running distance. I've been talking a lot about using the 30-15, which of course is exactly the same approach as using the anaerobic speed reserve. You just have different tools to put your athletes into buckets and then have either a reference speed if you were to use the 30-15 or having a reference range, and then you use percentages of that range. So back to the need to individualize exercise intensity. So in this case, if you were to do the typical box-to-box as on a football pitch, so from one box to the other, let's say, even though you have only your hybrid players together, so you're training the same players in the same bucket, within those hybrid, there are definitely some of them that are fitter and faster than others, even though they have the same relative ratio. And that was my point before, is that you have the ratio, that's the relation between those teams, those speeds, to put them into bucket, but then you still have to consider the absolute value so that you can link that to tolerance and also training prescription. So in this case, the question is, even though you have them from the same bucket in terms of profile, shall them really run all together based on some kind of energetic simulation that we've done last year? You can definitely understand that if they have different capacity at the start, and that's the mechanical power that is kind of estimated from models. From Christian Van Salo, for example, he's done an incredible job with that. You know, the player that is both fit and fast starts with a higher level of energy, and then every time he repeats one of these box-to-box runs, he uses a little bit of his available energy, replenish a little bit during recovery, use it again, replenish, use it again. But for sure, because he starts with a higher energy capacity than the others that have lower maximal sprinting speed and or lower maximal aerobic speed, those guys have a lower mechanical and energetic potential. Of course, they won't finish the sets, those box-to-box, at the same level of exertion, because we have not, in this case, individualized the distance to run. So different profile, or same type of hybrid profile, but different capacities in terms of absolute performance, they definitely, obviously, respond differently. So what's happening here is that we have guys exercising still at different percentage of their own reserve, because we have asked them to all do the same. So what shall we do? Again, you've seen those slides talking about the 30-15, same approach. Instead of using the same distance for everyone, we now can use the anaerobic speed reserve and put them, for example, all of them at 20% of their own reserve. So in this case, we are back to offering different distance to each of the different players so that the distance become individualized. And how this happens, if we look at that on the field, as simply as that, you have players starting at the level of different cones, for example. As you can see, based on the different angles, there was the guys at the Rugby Football Federation. That's those images now were shooted about 2 years ago now. But a good time there. I remember those sequences. And as simple as that, everyone runs a couple of meters more or less than the other based on their absolute values in terms of both maximal aerobic speed and maximal sprinting speed. As simple as that. Implementing this. That's image from Lille last preseason. As you can see, we had it here 4 or 5 groups. Everyone kind of set and organized to run based on their physical capacity. As simple as that, as I said. These are images that I've stolen on the internet, a bit of same idea. You see In this case, they're doing a 15-15. As you can see, the two guys on the right, they're going to end up doing 3-4 meters more than the other four, likely related to their higher maximal aerobic speed in this case, and or their maximal sprinting speed. Example from Atletico. Next one is example from another Spanish club, where here you see 1, 2, 3, 4 groups, and those groups are definitely based. Whether in this case, I'm really talking about the example of what they use to profile, whether they use Anaerobik Speed Reserve 30-15 or other things. They're definitely using player performances and profile, likely both, to set them on running different distances based again on their physical capacity, so that everyone gets roughly the same strain and the same mechanical and metabolic constraint and response. And what happens if we do this? In this case, again, as I just said, the cardiorespiratory, the metabolic demands are kind of equated for all of them. And now we're giving an homogeneous dose, and all of them get the same. They get the same level of exertion, and likely they get the same level of, let's say, stress and adaptation. Then, whether we have to play with the volume of work and or the type of work, then we are back to endurance, speed, hybrid profile, and that's another story we discussed before. But at least within a given type of work for a given player set of profile, then the next step is to go through the individualization of running distance as they were shown just here. I've shown those examples going back and forth on the pitch. You can also imagine having kind of duels going back and forth and meeting again in the middle. The idea behind that is that you can match and put in pairs players that have different capacities, because generally you always have the fit together, the slow together, because they tend to run together. In this case, because they're going on each side of the things, they don't need to have the same capacities, and they can still just change a little bit the dynamic. For example, if they go compete in kind of duels. You can organize that by concentric squares or rectangles. Same idea, that's based on their absolute performance. They can be on one square or the other. And of course, the further by external square, those guys, they run more. If you want that to be a little bit more, let's say, interesting and fun in this case, we can have those games that often you do with kids, or just have to bring balls from one side or the other, or balls or whatever. But there's a lot of things, a lot of ways so that can become very, very creative, so that you just break a little bit the routine, because we know, actually I didn't really talk about this aspect of using generic type of runs versus integrated versus with the ball. That's another story, that's for other chapters. But of course, you need to find the right blend and the use of those exercises based on motivations and the goals you want to reach with your different athletes.